that's how you want to start it right before.
We hadn't started yet, but it does. Alright, welcome back, Kremlins. I apologize. I said something kind of ridiculous as we hit the start button. As you will see if you're watching the video, Ash has some sort of
It's
beverage that.
oikos. It's the
Oh, is
oikos
that what it
smoothie.
is?
Yeah,
I
it just
haven't
like
seen
it
them in.
peeled all the way down, so like I took
Oh,
the whole wrapper off.
I hadn't seen the bottle in person, I guess. I don't know. But it looks like a baby bottle, and it was very confusing to me. I was like, it weirds me out every time she drinks it because it looks like a baby bottle. Anyways, welcome back to Engineering Chaos.
Blessed be the fruit.
Where, if you don't understand what Blessed be the Fruit means today, we're talking about Handmaid's Tale. I'm not even going to do the whole normal intro because realistically, if the Handmaid's Tale becomes a real thing, which I'm not saying that's even a possibility, if it did, we wouldn't be working anymore. So
No, we wouldn't.
work would no longer matter.
Nope.
But
Our
you
work would
said
be for the Lord.
Well, I wouldn't be the fuck in this country if that became a thing. I'd get the fuck up out of here. So
You want to make me pregnant? No, I'm getting out. Bye.
I already told my husband, I was like, if there's any signs of a fucking civil war breaking out, I'm getting the fuck up out of here. I know your crazy ass wants to stay and fight, but I'm getting the fuck up out of here. I'm not dealing with that shit.
I'm gonna grab my little bag and go.
And by fight, I don't really mean fight because he just wants to take out his hit list. That's all he wants to do. He doesn't want to actually fight for anything.
He wants to use the he wants to use the opportunity of the chaos to get
exactly.
his revenge.
Exactly.
That's fair. That's fair.
He just wants to take out his hit list. But Trump, we haven't talked since September. So the last time we recorded was before any election was even like close.
I know.
And now, well, the internet is exploding and liberals are crying and right-wing extremists, because I don't even want to call Trump supporters Republicans, because the diehard ones, in my opinion, aren't. And I prefaced with "in my opinion."
In my opinion.
Or celebrating in the streets, I suppose, if you would say. And people are going to have an interesting holiday season because many people are cutting off members of their family due to who they voted for, which is kind of a wild concept to me.
Yeah. I mean, even so, like, my father and I don't agree on who to vote for, and he doesn't cut me off, and I don't cut him off.
So
I don't know if it's like I'm not in that place where it's like toxic enough for me to feel the need to cut him off, though.
Well, some people aren't even like hearing a conversation, and I think that's the biggest thing with me is I do not support not trying to find a middle ground. If it is toxic to you and they are really just truly horrible people, fine, sure, cut them off, do it.
Yeah.
But not trying to understand the middle ground, because right, the last 3 elections have all been, in my opinion, the lesser of 2 evils. They've all sucked. The option, at least.
Yeah.
And when we turn politics into a reality TV show, which is what has happened in the last 3 elections, it becomes a personality contest and not about policy.
Yeah, but even before that, it was starting to get to that. But then, like, the reality TV show host starts trying to be president. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to
And
bring the
thing
theatrics.
It's been very theatrical and very annoying because no one wants to talk about policy, and that's what you're supposed to be voting for, is in fact policy.
Right.
And
so what it looked like the majority was basically just economics. Was the main reason why people voted.
I've seen a lot of people sit down with red voters and say, hey, what was your reasoning, right? Because I don't believe that you're a hateful person. I know you well enough to know X, Y, and Z things. What is your reason? Even AOC asked people on the internet, if you voted for Trump and me, why?
Right.
because in theory that makes no fucking sense why you would vote for AOC and Trump at the same time.
Correct. Correct.
So a lot of it came down to, we feel you actually represent the working people. You're not so disconnected from reality that you won't fight for the working class.
But that
And
doesn't make sense either.
that's interesting to me, that the working class truly does believe Trump has any interest
Care
in
for
them,
them? Yeah. I mean, he
because
says it
it's the same
verbally, but his actions say otherwise, and his
it's the
policies say
same thing with
otherwise.
Elon. Like, people that praise Elon for being
Oh
such a great, like, for getting shit done faster than NASA ever could.
yeah.
And again, when you're a private company, you don't have as much red tape as you do as developing things for the government. I will say
Oh
that.
goodness. Yeah.
You can skirt a lot of corners, but also, as an engineer who knows a lot of engineers who worked for SpaceX, their turnover is absolutely insane.
It's ass cheeks, and the burnout there is insane. The fact that they sleep in their cars at night
Yeah,
so they
they
don't have
work
to
so
travel.
much overtime that they burn out so quick, and they hire a lot of early engineers that don't know that that's not normal.
Yeah.
And then they burn out and they go work somewhere else. They never really develop, and things could have changed. This was like the early days of SpaceX when they were really trying to prove their concept.
I don't think it's
um
changed.
I don't know that it's changed, because
And
flight.
I've heard same things for Blue Origin too.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I've heard really horrible things about Blue Origins as well, which is, for those who don't know, Jeff Bezos's
Mhm.
company that is also in a similar area as SpaceX is. And I don't understand how people think those people are going to work for the working class. Just because of the companies they do currently own that hire working class people, right? There's
Mhm.
thousands upon thousands of stories out there. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but there is a ton of stories out there about Amazon and how they
Yeah,
treat their
pissing bottles.
workers and shit
Pissing
like that.
bottles. Yeah.
So I can't imagine Blue Origins is any better for the
Mm-mm.
engineers. It's just the white collar version of working as a
You
boxer
get
for Amazon.
slightly
Like,
better benefits. Slightly better.
um, and like, I'm even seeing this shit with my husband, who just recently went from a more blue collar type world to a white collar type world.
Mhm.
This man is getting excited over some of the most basic things, in my opinion, for working for a big company, like having
What, like
3
bennies?
monitors
Oh, the
and having
bennies.
health insurance.
Oh
And
my god.
he texted me yesterday and he was like, apparently I get a welcome gift. Companies do this. And I'm like, yeah, they do.
Bro, what? Yeah.
Um
You didn't get
big
yours? Oh.
companies,
I didn't get
big
mine, by the way. I don't know where
I've
the fuck
gotten
mine
it
went.
when I've changed groups within the so I've gotten
I
it multiple
haven't. That's
times.
fucked up, bro. What?
I
What
got a
about
welcome gift.
me?
I got a welcome gift when I started with the company, obviously. And then I got another one when I started with a different group within the company. And then I got another one when I
Coming
came back.
back.
It's so silly. I agree with wasting that money? No, not really. Because I think there are better things within the company that money could go to. It's similar
I know,
to
but
like,
it's so minuscule the amount
it
though.
is.
Cuz it's like
Eh,
what, they send you potato chips, an assortment of potato chips.
I think it depends on who you go to, right? So the first time,
I
like, I
know,
have
yeah.
like a really good Yeti that I use all of the fucking time at my house from one of the gifts, and maybe it was a Christmas gift or something like that. But one of the
Oh,
times I got like a full like company logo, which if I was still going to work would be, or company logo polo. There we go.
Pope.
And it's
Yeah,
like
I
a
was going to say.
tech shirt polo too.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
it's
so
actually a really
mhm.
nice one that I would
Mhm.
wear.
Yeah.
I just don't ever go physically to work anymore, so I don't have a reason to wear it, and I'm not gonna wear it
Fuck
out and about
that.
just to
No. It's so
that.
weird too cuz they're like don't wear the company logo, don't represent the company outside, blah 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 blah
Well, right
blah.
now I just
And then
wouldn't
they give
want
you like a
to,
bunch of shit that
because
has like all the logos everywhere.
everyone has so many opinions, and I just wouldn't want to right now. It seems like a risky
Oh,
thing to
yeah, no.
wear. any company, right? Because everyone seems
No,
to have an opinion of. I saw people putting out like they're red listing authors, right? People who have never said anything about politics are now being put on red lists
that's
so that you don't
insane.
buy books from them. And a lot of them are like new writers too. Like they only have 1 or 2 books out, and it's crazy.
It's like leave them alone.
Um,
Yo, people
if
people
they
can keep
didn't
their
say
opinions to
anything,
themselves.
yeah.
We should
So
encourage that, to be
there's like
honest.
there's wild like if they didn't say anything, they're red. Like they're red. That's kind of the opinion on the internet right now, and I don't agree with that either. Because they're
No.
doing it to influencers too. Right, Michelle the bartender. She has enough of her own controversies that like she doesn't need to be talking about politics. Like, I really don't care who she supports. She's a
Mm-hmm.
wild ass human, but like her whole content is mostly bar stories. Why
Yep.
would I want a bartender telling me about her political choices? Like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No.
But people have red listed her just because she said nothing. And a lot of bodybuilders I follow have been red listed, and they've since come out and be like, what the fuck? If you follow me, what the fuck made you think I support any of that shit? Which I find really funny because that's not super common in the fitness space. It is
Mm-hmm.
pretty safe to assume, in my opinion, that a lot of people, at least a lot of the men, I'm
Men. I
seeing
was gonna
I'm
say.
seeing more and more that the women in the fitness space are not, but a lot of the men for sure, which is the loudest voice in the room,
Yeah.
are diehard.
Yes.
But some are just more like centrist and they voted for the less of 2 evils, which is how we get into Handmaid's Tale. Now that
Yes.
this administration is shaping,
Mm.
we know what we're
Ow.
getting in January. A
Ow.
lot of people are starting to compare the potential this administration has to the Handmaid's Tale.
All right. So my one caveat is that the whole premises of the motivation, at least quote unquote motivation, of um Gilead like becoming Gilead is mainly because there was really bad um birth rates.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
What do you mean yes and no? Like it was like very rare to have children and then the having children
So
survive.
I think the biggest difference between today's Republicans and the commanders or the architects of Gilead is the fact that Gilead was not climate deniers. They
No,
knew,
they acknowledge that the climate's fucked
yes,
up.
that
Yeah.
the environmental things like our water and our air and things like that were in
And
fact impacting
mhm.
those
And
birth
toxic
rates.
waste.
But talking about birth rates is a conversation that's going on in the US right now.
Yeah, but it's not as insane as the way that
Oh, but it
the
is.
is it?
When you look at those types of people, I think the
Oh,
biggest
they
caveat,
I feel like they make it a bit like they make a mountain out of a molehill.
yes, but also the reality is they're comparing us to the boomers. We are not replacing the generation, and it's not just an us problem, and it's a worldwide problem. A lot of countries
Yeah.
are just not having kids.
What's
And
that?
there's 500 million reasons for that, but
What's the B? Is it B4? B4 movement?
4B
4B.
in North Korea,
Yeah.
or the one that started in North Korea.
The one that started in no, it was South Korea.
Is it South Korea? I knew it
It's
was one
South
of the Koreas.
Korea.
I thought it was North Korea, but
No.
anyways, yes, the 4B movement that has now taken hold also in the US of women saying that they won't sleep with, marry, date, have kids with.
Acknowledge.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that one's kind of silly too, because as many of Republicans have come into those comments and said, good for you, you figured out what modesty is. Now you're not going to be a slut. It just
That's
opens.
not how it works. That's it's not what?
But it makes them happy. So you defeated the whole point. If you're not
Okay.
having babies out of like, it's just, then you're not being a slut, as they would put it, right? Or the
Okay.
ones that believe that that's how that works. But
Okay, but you one, you still gonna rape them, and then two.
Well, that's where your body, my choice to come in too.
Yeah. But like
Which
if
I'm
you
gonna.
want just I don't know but
It
if they're
doesn't.
gonna have if they're just not if they're gonna swear off men and then you say, oh, you're finally not a slut, well, okay, good job, but now you can't have them because they don't want you. You're not gonna have babies anyway then with them. So you have to be with the sluts. In that logic, I'm confused.
Yeah, people are weird. I'm not gonna get too much into that one because
There's no logic.
that is a parallel between Handmaid's Tale and Gilead, though, and
Yeah.
current day, right? A lot of it was birth control is the problem and abortion is the problem because the ones that can have babies are just killing them. Because I don't know where this storyline falls, but there is a storyline you might not have seen yet related to that. That's a flashback with one of the handmaids.
One of the handmaids had an abortion before
In a flashback,
in a
yes, or
flashback. Yeah.
wanted one.
Oh, she
I can't.
wanted one or
Yes, and
wanted an abortion.
she went to, like, not as a handmaid, but in a flashback,
Mhm.
she went to a clinic requesting an abortion, and she was
Mhm.
very flippant about it. Was like, yeah, fucking condom fell off, like, fuck me, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a flashback, obviously it was the before times.
Mhm.
And the clinic she went to was in the
Like
roots of the Gilead creators and was very guilt tripping
refused.
of her, and this is what you really should be doing. It's
Mhm.
unsafe, telling them, again, similar to the rhetoric we're getting now.
Yeah.
The abortion medications are unsafe and they cause a lot more effects than we know of, which could be possible. I don't know. I haven't looked at the research. I'm assuming not, but this is how we get. I am not saying the possibility of Gilead is ever a thing because there is a lot of moving pieces that would make that very, very difficult.
Mhm.
But rhetoric like that it's unsafe, is how we get into places where the FDA is now rolling back previous approvals, and how we
Right.
get to places where we're not changing laws, but we're seemingly making things illegal because of that.
Or just harder to get to.
That too.
Resources are harder to get to.
But say, right, Trump just named RFK Jr. as his Department of Health and Human Services.
Mhm.
Or at least I have not fact checked that. That's what I saw. I'm assuming that is
No,
a true statement because I expected that to be a thing.
I think my mom said that too. So
Um,
I'm
there's
trying not to really pay attention.
there's a few cabinet picks that have
I'm letting
floated
you do
around
it.
online that weren't actually true. So I haven't. I will clarify that I have not at this moment fact checked that. I will make sure that when this episode goes live, that is fact checked.
Do you want me to
But
Google it now?
um RFK Jr. has been very clear about some of his feelings about things like vaccines and chemicals in our foods and things like that, which some of the things he says aren't terrible. I'm not, like, anti all of these dyes, but they're probably not the best for us, right?
Mm-mm.
Um all the processed foods, like, a lot of people are hoping he goes after the processed food industry, which,
Yeah.
as a nutrition coach, I'm all for, because
Honestly, if
hyper
he does it,
palatable foods,
yeah,
not a good thing.
we need more nutrients.
But none of that matters if you don't make the price of something like produce and good meats and things like that similar to that of processed foods. If people can't actually afford to buy any of the good stuff, getting
Yeah,
rid of
he
all
is
of the stuff
nominated.
they could afford. Okay, so yeah, he was the
Facts.
cabinet
Yeah.
pick.
Yeah, yeah,
Um
yeah. Because
getting
I
rid of all that
remember
processed
hearing
stuff.
a snippet of Trump saying, um,
Well, there
like,
was a lot of
yeah, I
speculation
chose
even before Trump was elected. That's what he was going to do.
right, but Trump. There was a recording of Trump saying, I elected him. He said we're gonna do a great job, clean this up, except I'm not gonna let him do anything with the whole like the petroleum and the energy sector.
Well,
He's
that
like,
wouldn't be
ignore
Health and
that
Human
part. You get to
Services.
have this
That's the
part.
EPA.
I know.
Um, However, right, Health and
Mhm.
Human Services, RFK Jr. will now be, if he is confirmed, because that's a whole different topic altogether. If he is confirmed, he would be in charge of things like the CDC, the FDA, and a bunch of other random pieces. I think school lunch programs in some extent, like not the funding for it, but like
Yeah.
how they get worked out or whatever. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. Don't quote me on that one. But I know CDC and FDA for sure. I expect a lot of
It's gonna be
FDA rollbacks
oh yeah.
and a lot of research to kind of be throttled
Well, I know he's
in
gonna
that world.
he's probably gonna like flip the entire committees and the groupings of people who make those decisions
I
within
mean,
those.
that's Trump plans on completely changing the government structure. And again, is it really possible for him to do some of the things he wants to do? It really
No
depends.
idea. I
Um,
mean, he's got everyone on his side to do so,
yes
then
and
yeah.
no. Because to do something like get rid of women's right to vote, right? That is a constitutional amendment. You need a 3/4 majority, which he
Okay.
does not
I
have.
don't think he'd go that far.
Some people do. That's my
Okay.
point. Is there
Got
are
it.
some things, however, that is a parallel to look for when it comes to Gilead and the potential
Yes.
of things like that to happen. Is because
They're not even
Gilead
allowed to
didn't,
read.
I mean, I don't expect it ever to go that far. That
When
would be insane.
women aren't allowed to read the Bible that they
That would
are
be insane.
basing it off.
That would be insane if it ever went that far. However, the things that a lot of people fear, right? Women completely losing the right to vote, the right to property, the right to
Their
have a
body.
credit card, their banks. I mean, the
Yeah.
body thing is already said and done. Like, there's really nothing we can do about that because it's either going to be at the state level and you just have to choose your states appropriately. Unfortunately, I
And then
don't
if you
agree
don't
or disagree
have
with that.
I mean, but if you don't have the resources to get out of state and move, that's also an issue. But yeah.
Well, I don't agree with surveillance states like Texas trying to put like actual trackers on people so that they can be jailed for going to other states. I mean, that
That's
defeats the purpose of
fucking
having a United States if you are
yeah.
now tracking people's movement into and out of other states.
Yeah. I mean,
But
if it's like serial killers, that's one thing.
well, at that
But
point, you've lost your rights because you're a felon. If you are a felon out on
but
parole,
they
no shit,
but
you're
they
going to be surveilled.
consider that a felony though.
Well, that's the point. Is they want to make things like abortions. So this is the thing: is we can't enter Gilead without following a really interesting line,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even as something as dumb as appointing Elon as a department head, right? That agency doesn't exist, part one. But part two, Elon will have to divest all of his interests in his companies that deal with the government if that is becoming a true appointment.
And he will not want to do that.
He cannot be a government representative and also own companies that do business with the government.
Mm-mm.
That is just not a thing. Conflict of interest.
Yes.
Technically speaking, he really wasn't supposed to be giving his opinion on the election as the owner of companies that do business with the government, but I'm not going to talk about that. Technically, that is a huge ethics thing, which, again, the Trump administration has not signed their ethics agreement, which he was supposed to
What?
sign in October. Yes. Yeah. So, again, these are all kind of parallels, right? We don't need right wing extremists to go and blow up Congress like they did in The Handmaid's Tale
Because
when
they're already
we've
there.
already installed them in the government.
Facts. Facts.
However, the entirety of Gilead's existence swung on the fact that they suspended the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
None of that would have happened without suspending the Constitution.
How does that happen?
Martial law.
Right.
There are talks,
How does
and these are all just rumors. They are not confirmed facts. There is no draft policy that I'm aware of at this moment in time
mm-hmm.
that in order to carry out these mass deportation day one dictator policy that Trump has talked about the entire campaign trail, that he would declare a emergency state for the entire country, aka martial law, in order to carry it out. If martial law gets declared, our Constitution is essentially suspended.
I'm just so confused. Because, like, how does he even like, how would you.
Executive
Why?
order.
I know, but why?
Why
Like,
what?
just to deport people?
In order to carry it out, because what he would have to do is one of the things he's talked about doing in order to carry it out is turning the military on U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
Most
Destroy the
respectable
enemies
military
within.
leaders would say
Yeah.
that's unconstitutional and refuse the order.
Mm-hmm.
He wants loyalists, from my understanding. Again, this is so many different types of media coming at me, and I'm trying to look at these things from every which direction.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about everything going on today, even the writer herself has said, if I wrote Handmaid's Tale today, it would not create the shock factor it did when I wrote it. Because the only thing America has yet to do is the clothing. And if I can find that clip again, I'll insert it. But
no, I mean, there's still like a lot
there's a
of
lot, but
levels
there's
to it,
also a
though.
lot that they can do to get around physically changing the Constitution as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Right? You're talking
we don't hang people in front of
yet.
we don't put them along the walls and in the
We're
town
talking
squares.
about detention camps for illegals.
Okay,
What does that
yeah,
sound like?
that sounds like the colonies.
I wasn't gonna go there, but yeah, yeah, it also sounds like the colonies. Work
Okay,
labor
wait,
camps. I think some people have said.
where were you going with it?
Mustache Man is where I was going with it.
Mustache
Things I'm not allowed to say on the internet without getting us banned.
Mustache man. Mustache man. No, it's not this one. It's this one. Because it's only.
Yeah, that one. He was technically elected too. So a lot of people have made parallels to that more so than Handmaid's Tale, and I can see the parallels, right? If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
And if we look at both the series of Handmaid's Tale and the book, right? The book is a
I haven't
lot
read yet.
darker.
Yeah.
They
I'm not ready for it.
definitely had planned the Serena redemption arc when they cast Serena, because Serena in the book is more like Aunt Lydia, Kane, not gorgeous and drink of
Never.
like.
Oh, she's not gorgeous?
No,
Oh.
she's a lot older from what I remember, but she definitely
Mm-hmm.
has like a cane and is literally more like how Aunt Lydia is portrayed in the series.
Interesting. By the way, I just went through the episode where it is the Aunt Lydia throwback.
It's not
Like,
enough of an Aunt Lydia throwback, if I remember. Because when I read the Testaments, which is a lot focused on Aunt Lydia,
mm-hmm.
there was so much more complexity to that character than she was just like a brute force.
I mean, that's
Also,
fair
if
when
I
you have like a
remember
whole.
correctly, that throwback is just a made up story. Like, it's not Aunt Lydia's story per the books.
Yeah. No, because it's like I've passed the point where the book ends and now it's
Well,
just
so
TV series.
and this is what I was talking about when we were texting earlier. So after you get to the point where Handmaid's Tale ends, some of the TV series picks up some of the storylines that are
Mm-hmm.
alluded to in the Testaments
Mm-hmm.
from a different point of view, right? In the Handmaid's Tale, you don't know, and I guess this is a giant spoiler alert to the series and the books.
That's fine. Spoil it. Spoil it for me. That's fine.
Not I was just to listeners,
Oh,
right? If you have an interest in the series and in the books, just kind of ignore this whole episode, I suppose. Um,
or
but
listen to it and get encouraged.
so, right, we don't know that June gets baby Nicole out at the end of Handmaid's Tale.
Okay, that's what I didn't know. Yeah.
But in the Testaments, you get
It's from Nicole's perspective.
yes and no, because what the real perspective of the Testaments is post Gilead world, reading the court cases that came out of Gilead being dismantled,
Oh
reading
shit.
diaries from Aunt Lydia. So it's all from like a history student's perspective and like a
Oh.
historical art museum kind of thing based on Gilead. That's really kind of
Ooh.
what the perspective of the Testaments is.
I kind of like that. I
So
like that a
you'll
lot.
get stories from the perspective of what they told a detective from
Mm-hmm.
Agnes and Nicole, or Hannah, Agnes, and Nicole. And
Nicole
then,
Holly.
do they change her name? Oh, yeah, they do.
Yeah, so she wants to name her Holly after her mother. And
But she
then
always goes,
because Serena had said yes, like escape with her, take her to safety in
yeah,
that one
name her
instance,
Nicole.
then
Okay.
yeah,
But she
sorry.
never knows that piece, right? So baby Nicole in the Testaments doesn't know until they send her back into Gilead as a smoking gun that she is baby Nicole. She's like late teens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the exact age timeline, but she doesn't find out that she is the baby Nicole Gilead has been looking for years until they send her back in. They
Oh.
completely erased her identity. She is no longer with June. She's never met June to her knowledge.
Right.
Um and when she gets sent back into Gilead and meets Agnes for the first time, she does not know that Agnes is actually her sister.
Half sister, but yes.
Yes. I'm one of those people that I don't like to like yes,
I
biologically it's a half sister, but like
biologically, yes.
um
Sister regardless. But not like religious sister either.
well, yeah, okay, fine. But also I like the Testaments. It gives a lot of background of how the ants come to be. And because realistically you don't need the ants, but the three original ants,
Mm,
Aunt Lydia and two others, because you get their backstory of how they got rounded up at the early days of Gilead,
mm-hmm.
you see how this network of ants, because the ants are the only
Starts
people in
forming.
Gilead, or the only women in Gilead that are allowed to read and write.
Oh, oh yeah, because they actually help choose where the handmaids go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
the
where they're
ants have a
placed.
whole school, right? If you decide that your calling is to be an ant. And this is
Mm-hmm.
part of the Testaments as well. Agnes, and I think they're going to explore this in the sixth season and the final season of Handmaid's Tale, because they kind of alluded to it at the end of season 5, which I'm not going to say how, but
Mm-mm.
they might
I'm
explore
not
this
there
in
yet.
season 6, which I don't know. This is me speculating what they might explore in season 6.
Mm-hmm.
One of June's worries later in life becomes she's almost of age to become a wife. We need to get her out of there before she becomes a wife. That has been kind of in the thought of June's head the entire series, and you kind of
I
get
okay,
that.
so I didn't but she one is already a wife, first of all. But like I thought handmaids.
Agnes,
Oh,
her
Agnes.
daughter.
You said June.
June, you see June's worry for Hannah throughout the entire series, right? When she doesn't go with Nicole,
Follow.
when she,
I'm
right,
already kind of
she,
there at the start of it though. At the start of June having that, like, oh my god,
yeah,
she's
exactly.
about to start bleeding and be ready to
Yeah,
have babies.
she has that thought, right? And because she's a commander, Agnes is a commander's
Thank you.
daughter.
Yes, she
Agnes
has a
Hannah.
privilege. Yes.
She will be married
Mhm.
off, no
Yes.
doubt, as a proper Gilead wife.
Hmm.
So that becomes the thought in
At
June's head
15, by the
later. You
way.
get in, yes. Um, child brides is a whole different topic we can parallel to current day. Um,
All right.
uh, so that becomes kind of the ending point of Handmaid's Tale as it stands right now. And in the Testaments, you see from Hannah's point of view, her go through the preparatory school for being a wife. You see her get because the aunts actually in the Testaments are who picks the the aunts and the family, the parents are who picks
The
the commander
commanders.
you marry.
Yeah.
And Hannah gets matched with Lawrence. Think for a second. You've definitely met this character in the series thus far.
I have. I'm there, but like in the TV show, he's a old man.
Mm-hmm.
Is he
Hannah
an
is
old?
15
And
and
he's
he is an
he's
old man.
he's still an old man in
Yes.
the
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Now in the TV show, I have a hard time understanding that character because he's not
That's
conventional
all.
to.
You don't have that in, like, you kind of get it's alluded to in the Testaments, but it's not in Handmaid's Tale at all.
So how they made Lawrence and Handmaid's Tale is completely like off books,
Correct.
off of the not on the books, but off, like yeah, off books.
And I
I don't know.
think as you get into season 4, season 5, maybe later in season 3, you'll start to see Aunt Lydia and Lawrence's weird relationship.
Oh, what?
Like, not
Hold
like
on, but
relationship, but like
oh,
how
okay. Oh,
they handle each other. Like,
mm,
Aunt Lydia has secrets about this man, kind of thing.
well, no, well, Aunt Lydia doesn't trust the man,
Yes,
and
and that is because in the
that's fair because
Testaments, you find out Lawrence is actually helping the resistance. He is
yes,
getting plans for Gilead military out and to the resistance in Canada
but he's
via.
he's kind of already doing that now.
They're
He's
building that
helping
story
he's
from
helping the
inside of Gilead.
resistance. He's yes, but okay. So first of all, if anyone who doesn't know Lawrence's character, he's the architect of the entire economy
Original
structure
architect,
of
yes. And you
Gilead.
find out he kind of regrets a lot of
He
what he
regrets
did.
it.
Yeah.
He made his wife go kind of loopy insane.
Mm-mm.
Well, she was
She
already,
was that way before.
I know, but she got worse,
Correct.
obviously. And then, like, they stopped providing her medicine, so she off her rockers. Um,
Yes.
but he had the opportunity to get her out and get her safe to Canada to get her the medications and the stuff that she needed to keep her mentally sane. Instead, he selfishly kept her locked in the house. And it's like, no, she's my wife.
Because he's a
She's not
bigger
gonna be.
player.
He is. I know, but like,
He is
so
literally the resistance inside of Gilead, right? So
which,
what you
but
find out.
in the
Oh, go ahead.
beginning, when we first meet him in the episode, though, like we know that he has those connections because he helps. Um, what's her face?
Emily.
Emily. Yeah, helps Emily escape. Tries to help June escape with um Nicole,
Nicole.
but then she just gives Nicole to Emily and says, "Take her to my
Well,
husband."
yeah, but that's all made up by the TV series.
Right,
Um,
but like TV series, period. Like we meet him initially knowing that he knows about the resistance, he has connections with the resistance. He kind of turns a blind eye to it. We don't see him involved, but we see
correct.
him just like look the other way.
But you see him involved in the Testaments.
Yeah.
He. So what you find out in the Testaments is ants have a very lengthy process to becoming ants. They don't just magically become ants as their calling, right? They have to obviously go through the process of learning how to read and write. They have to go through a bunch of scripture and a bunch of other things. But one of the other things they have to do is missionary work in order to become a full-blown aunt. And
Like
they call those girls that they
outside of
send out outside of Gilead. Yeah,
country?
they send them to
Oh
Canada, they
fuck.
send them to other places, because one thing people forget when they talk about Gilead is the United States still exists. The United States, to some extent, the
In
states that didn't
Alaska.
fall to Gilead. No. It's more than Alaska. It's for instance, in the series, you hear them say, "I hear we're taking
Chicago.
Chicago."
Yeah, there's
Um,
Chicago, and
so
then
there
there's
are
like
states that were still resistant to it.
Alaska and
Um,
Hawaii too, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Just because those are
Because I mean,
remote.
it's really hard to capture those.
Yeah.
But the United States is at war with Gilead, so it's
Mm-hmm.
basically a civil war, for lack of a better way of putting it. But the
A
other
continuous one.
half, um, decided to name themselves the Republic of Gilead.
Yes. And
um,
but in the series, or at least the TV series, because I can't speak to the books, they do start recognizing Gilead as a country, and then
that's true
we know of
on either
other
side.
countries that are either supporting Gilead or supporting the
There's
resist,
not
like
as
the United
much
States.
talk about that in the books because, right, I think in the series, I can't remember what season it is, another country comes to visit Gilead to see how the system works and everything else.
Switzerland,
Yeah,
the Mexico.
no, I was like, I think it was like a Hispanic country.
Yeah,
Anyways,
it's Mexico. Yep.
um, that
And they were
doesn't
basically going to
really,
trade the handmaids as
yeah,
like commodities.
yes, because fertility was such an issue,
Is a
and we see that
commodity.
in today, right? We see a lot more infertility issues, a lot more people leaning towards IVF just because they have some medical issue one way or another, whether it's
Hmm.
endometriosis, low sperm count. Like there's 500 different reasons why people would lean to IVF.
Correct.
But
But the way that they portray it in the TV series is that it's always the woman's fault.
yes, that's just
And
patriarchy. That's
and
just
saying that
religion.
men
That's
are
not
infertile is
a sin.
is a
Yes.
sin, and you get what's the punishment for that one? They have so many
I
different
don't
weird
know.
punishments. Reading
I
is a
don't
finger.
remember. Yeah.
It used to be, and then Lawrence goes, it used to be a hand. Man,
They're all
back in the good old
biblical.
days.
Yeah, they're all biblical because like you'll see like the handmaids
That
rip a sex offender apart, and I don't understand why it's the handmaids. That's one thing I was talking
why
to
does it have to be the
Josh about last
handmaids that
night.
do it?
Why is it always the handmaids that carry it out? That's the one part I don't understand.
I don't either. And it
That's I've never
you're
understood that about the
you're
series.
breeding you're breeding you're breeding women, first of all, but you're also breeding the deterioration of their fucking mental state doing that. Do you think that's gonna be good for
Yeah,
the
for
baby?
sure. No. Well, they don't. So the pregnant ones don't participate
I know the pregnant ones don't participate, but they still have to watch it happen and know that it happens.
because somewhere along the series there is a punishment that is for all handmaids, and it's when
Yes,
June
and
is
it's
pregnant with
burning
Nicole.
burning their
Yeah.
hand on the stove. Yeah, they
No, no,
literally
no.
chain their
They're
hands to this
outside in the rain holding a rock because they
that
refused
correct to throw
that one.
rocks at Janine. I get it.
Yeah.
But after that, after they were in the rain, then they were chained to the stove and their hands
Yeah.
burned one by one.
And then there was another one
And they
where they
all
tried
had
to
to watch
hang
each
all the
other.
handmaids. I don't know what season that one is.
That one was they did hang all the handmaids, but those were the resistance, the ones.
No, they like rounded up every handmaid, June, all the ones, and
Oh fuck.
like
No,
in the
oh
middle of
yeah,
the
no, no.
night,
So they
and then they
pretended
just backed out of it.
to. They
Yeah.
pretended to do it just to scare them. And
Yeah.
then one of them peed
Yep.
because they was scared.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you talk about right parallels between today's day and age and what the
Hmm.
flashbacks of Gilead were, um, military being turned on U.S. citizens, that's a
That,
scary thought, for
yeah.
sure. Um, And then we've got fertility scares, right? A lot of people are worried that our infertility rates are rising unbelievably. And there are studies saying that male testosterone is tanking significantly,
Yeah, that's why they can't get it
and
up.
has been over the last like 5 to 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
even in young males, which
ED
is
is
an issue.
ED is bad. Yes, ED is bad. I've noticed that with my like people around my age having a hard time getting it up.
Well, some of it could be med cocktails, some of it could be like there's so many different
Sure,
reasons.
sure. It is a
Without a
mixture of a
blood
lot of
test, you
things.
don't really know, right?
And then
But
the fact that they
environment
don't
definitely doesn't
go to
help
the
there.
doctor. The
Well,
fuck?
that too. But you've got scares about fertility and birth rates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, some will debate that the scare about birth rates is more about scare about not having a workforce. Um, that's possible.
Yeah.
But you've got that parallel. You've got um the war on kind of drugs and lewd culture, right? I would say millennials are more of the lewd culture generation than the younger. I feel like we're shifting a little bit with the younger Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, maybe not your half of Gen Z when it
Define
comes to
define lewd.
just members of hookup culture and more likely to rebel and do things like get
No,
tattoos and party
no.
and
You don't I don't think you interact enough with my generation and younger
that's why
to
I
be
said
able
the
to make that.
older half of your generation
Are less lewd?
are more like millennials, and I think the younger half is less lewd. There seems to be a
Less.
shift more towards conservatism.
They are not. I promise you that.
Maybe
I promise you that they
I
are
just,
not.
my cousin that we used to work with is a part of your generation. She was very and a lot of her friends, but her younger sister was a wild child, so maybe it's just kind of
I see a lot more, at least in the cities that I have friends in and all of that. It's more like polyamory, open relationships, less monogamous,
but the people
less.
who are doing that is more like older. I mean, at least from what I've seen.
It's my age and younger too,
Maybe uh and then you've got like the
and we still
people.
got fuckboys. So
I
I
mean,
fuck
there will
girls.
always be fuckboys. I mean, that's a thing, right? When
Hmm.
people talk about porn being the problem, I'm like, well, there's a market for it.
I think I think it is a problem. I don't want to say it's the problem, but it is a problem.
I'm not blaming the people that create it, though.
No,
That's the
no,
thing.
no. They need to make
Is if
bank.
there's a
They need to make
problem,
their
it's the
money.
consumers, right? If there's no
Exactly.
market for it, then you wouldn't have people
Then you wouldn't
creating
have
it.
this problem. Exactly.
And to
But
the
here's
same
the thing that we see in the Handmaid's Tale is that they basically still kind of like the commanders still have an underground network to be able to be inappropriate
exactly.
and
But that's my point,
literally fuck other women
right? You see
without their
states
wives
like
knowing.
Texas banning porn. They
Mm-hmm.
have like banned some of the well-known porn websites in Texas as of now.
Can they do
And
that?
they can age restrict it, and I think that's more so what they've done. But I know I've seen people. I really haven't looked into it because it's not
I thought
something
it
I
was
was
age
concerned
restricted
about.
already.
Well, it's supposed to be, but if all you have to do is put in a date online to get access to the website, I mean, no one's really. It's the same thing
And you
with
could also
social
have a
media, right?
VPN. You could also have a VPN. Say you're not in the state. So that's why I'm like, how do you even do that? Anyway,
There's,
whatever.
I mean, there's plenty of different ways to access it if you really wanted to, but the fact that you would go out of your way to access it is that's kind of the
That's
point.
that's telling. That's telling. You're
That's
like,
literally the point, right? Um, and I don't like OnlyFans isn't strictly a porn site. Like, yes, is it
no,
mostly porn people? Yes, but it's not
that's not.
strictly.
Mm-mm.
Some people prefer it over something like Patreon just because of probably revenue split or something stupid. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. But right, so an attack on porn is definitely something that was a flashback. An attack on women's rights was definitely something that's been in the flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And debate
Parallel.
what, um to me, right, I really don't give a fuck what people do, but also abortion affects more than just that procedure itself. To me, that's more about right to proper health care than it is
Mm-hmm.
about the procedure itself, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Yeah.
Because if people are dying because doctors are afraid of being prosecuted, there's an issue with the law.
And the ethics. Because they actually swear to help.
Do
Whoever
no
you are doesn't
harm.
matter. Do no harm.
And if the issue is solved simply by renaming things in medical billing systems so that um the like, to me personally, I don't give two shits, right? Do what you want to do, you're a grown adult. I do care. Again, my husband and I have talked about this a lot. I draw the line at kids. Do what you want. If you are over the age of 18, I don't give two fucks what you do with your doctors in your home. Really don't care. I draw the line at kids.
Oh, this is going into the like what the transgender
No,
that
it's the same
affirming
with,
care stuff or
it's, well, gender affirming care is a whole different topic because that could impact really ridiculous things like someone's ability to get a breast reduction for back problems.
yeah.
Um if you want to get an enhancement after breast cancer, it could impact that. Um and I don't like that because gender affirming care is such a wide, it could be
Yeah.
anything. It could be a fucking
It's
nose
literally
job.
just
Like
yeah. That one's
um
confusing. It's
and
all
again,
confusing.
but it's the same thing with abortions too, though, because I don't think teenagers should be making that decision without at least having
Uh,
a conversation
pa-
with their parents. I don't
yeah.
think medical providers should be doing things, and the same with teachers. And people can fight me on this all they want. I don't think teachers or medical providers should be doing things behind their students' backs or behind their students' parents' backs, because
Yeah.
yes, some
They're not
parents
the
are
guardian.
absolutely shitty. Some parents are absolutely shitty human beings, and I'm sorry for that. I don't, it's not the teacher's place and it's not the medical provider's place to
Mm-mm.
fight that line. They are still a minor in the hands of their parents. And I wish I could save the world from shitty parents, but we can't.
No.
So that is still the parents' right, in my opinion,
I
to
mean,
have that conversation with their kids.
you can save the kid from their
Proving abuse in
parents,
a home is
but
so hard.
it's so hard, right? But the so at least what we see in Gilead in the flashbacks is that when they were tracking the parents and monitoring them, they had way stricter, like it was way easier to lose your kid and lose your rights to
Agreed.
being a parent.
In the not full Gilead, but
Yeah.
they have bombed Congress era flashbacks, yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing that was implemented there is in order to get birth control, you had to have your spouses sign off on
Husbands
it.
sign it. Mm-hmm.
That's very similar to what a lot are facing in the world of getting their tubes tied. If they are too young, if they are not enough kids, if they are, I don't know. I know those two
Just
for sure. They want male sign
mm,
off. Not
yeah.
all providers, because there definitely are many providers that will do it without any sort of male sign off. But the fact that there are any that require it is
Mm-hmm.
insane, in my opinion. Because you don't see the same reverse with vasectomies.
No, but those
At
can
least
be
I haven't
reversible.
heard the same reverse, right?
It can be the vasectomies can be reversed.
Yes and no. People have
Y-
said that, but
People, it is a hit or miss. I don't know what the
tubles
statistics
can
are.
go through IVF as long as you don't remove, as long as you don't do a full hysterectomy, you can
Yeah,
still go through IVF. It's the same
but here's the thing:
concept.
some women have to, like, they know something's wrong. They most likely need a hysterectomy, but the doctors won't even like go down the route of doing the
The,
testing or
yeah,
any of that.
those are a
To
whole different topic. If you have like severe
yeah,
endometriosis and things like that, and you just
usually
need
it
to
takes years to get
yeet that,
diagnosed
agreed. Um, if you
and
just
go to
need to
multiple
yeet
doctors.
everything, um, then that's a whole different topic. But I
You,
just, women who don't want kids,
yeah.
right, aren't able to just say, hey, I don't want them. Let me
Mm-hmm.
tie all my loose ends up.
Yeah.
And a way we could end up in that scenario, right? Similar to Gilead, we could have parental, or not parental, but spousal male property, whatever, however you want to put it, approval for birth control,
Yeah.
which would be silly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you could do things like, we were talking about the FDA earlier. You could rescind the FDA approval of some of these things.
Yeah.
Some people are misguided. I'm not going to say uneducated because I hate that term has turned weaponized as of late. Um,
Yeah.
I don't love it. Both sides have weaponized it, right? I've seen
I
a lot of
mean,
red
you
people
can be
saying you're on
educated
a, yeah.
in fake. You can be educated in fake news. You can be educated in things that are obviously like not based
Or
on
you could just be
facts.
educated and selfish. I mean,
True. Yeah.
uh,
That
right.
also just that feels like a threat. You know, that I take
My
offense to.
my cousin and my cousin has two kids, and she was just in town, and she just cruised. Like, she hasn't really been on vacations, and she had her now 4-year-old, I think.
Hmm.
And she was like, before she went on the cruise, we were talking, and her husband are trying to go through fertility treatments again. And then when she got back, she's like, I don't know, I kind of like this vacation thing. I might not want to do this again.
Um,
And I was like, why do you
kitchen
think,
is closed.
I was
No
like,
more
why do you
baking.
think I'm a dink right now? Because we like our freedom. And I'm not saying kids ruin your freedom. I'm not, because I was an only child that my parents took everywhere. I
Yeah,
never felt like I was left out of anything as a kid. But I feel like if you have more than one, that becomes not a possibility. Um,
that becomes
and
more of a juggle.
me personally, I would be one and done if we had kids. Like, I wouldn't want more than that.
Hmm.
I would. People can say, like, didn't you want siblings growing up? No, I never once, like, I got kind of mad when my dad got remarried, and I now had to own up to the fact that I had step siblings. Like, I was a grown ass adult, and I was like, this is annoying. I liked being an only child, and I always have. I had plenty of cousins. Like, it doesn't bother me that I don't have like nieces and nephews and things like that. Like,
Hmm.
I did my
I,
time raising other people's kids, honestly. Like, I'm okay not doing it now.
I think I got the best of all worlds because I'm the youngest, I'm the only girl, and like there's enough of an age gap. So
Yeah, I mean,
I
age gap
felt
kids
like
is
the
also
only
one of
child
those
at times.
things. Yeah, age gap kids for sure. Like, my husband's the
Yeah.
youngest, but him and his sister are only 3 years apart. So they are not, they're polar opposites of each other.
Yeah.
um and he, because it was a reverse, right? He was the younger boy. He always had a lot more expectations than she did put on him.
So that's that's different.
I think it's
My
Hispanic culture. They treat the boys a lot more harshly than they do the girls. I could be wrong. I didn't grow up in it, but
I
I
don't
that's my understanding.
I think it's different expectations. I don't think it's just different expectations.
Yeah, for
Um
sure. But right in Gilead, right? Fred, when Nicole, like when June is pregnant with Nicole, is like obsessed with the idea of it being a boy. And I think that's because they know in Gilead, women are less than. They're just property and playthings and pretty
e-
pictures.
even Serena knew it. And she was a highly educated woman who helped get
Create
Gilead
Gilead.
create Gilead, and
And
then she got shafted. She got majorly shafted and lost the
that's where
finger.
I struggle with, like, right? We all know Melania doesn't give two fucks about her husband. Like, I'm not saying that they have a good relationship in any way, shape, or form. Trump's been married like what, 4 times, something crazy like that. Um, which is the humor behind him being kind of like the representative of religion, but um I struggle when it comes to Republican wives, right? I struggle. I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Vance's wife.
I mean, they're just they don't they don't have independence. They don't have a mind of their own,
Well,
is
I
what
don't
I
want to
feel.
say that though. Like, I
Well, no,
don't
I
know
know they
that
do, but like it's hard to describe. It's more of like,
because from what I understand, before he hit the campaign trail, Vance's wife was like very well respected, working high up in like a law firm or something. I think she's a lawyer. And I would love to sit down and have a conversation with her just to kind of understand who he is behind the scenes,
yeah.
because he does not interview well. He seems to be one of the most
No.
hateful people on the planet when he
It's awkward too.
interviews.
Super awkward too.
I don't know what's going on with the guy liner. I don't know what that's about.
No, I
Um
did not see that. Hold
almost
on. I'm
every
gonna Google
interview
this.
he's had since the debate, the VP debate, he's been wearing like emo guy liner. Like, you can see it
Let's go.
actively. But like, you do you. Like, I don't
But his
care.
eyeballs are already so small. Like, why would you put eyeliner to make them even smaller?
But as like a woman that is very high powered in like our space, right? I would love
Mm-hmm.
to understand why she would take a step back to let him go like, why?
Oh,
And
you're
I
so
understand
right.
sometimes it's like to take care of your kids and things like that, but it's one of those things that hurts my head, because especially given the campaign they've been running, right? She is a woman of color,
I think his
a
eyelashes are
working
just so
mom,
dense. There's like,
maybe.
I
It
think
looks like
it's,
guy liner, but
it
I'm
does,
not
but
gonna. That's
I
a
think his eyelashes just shadow. He's
to
got
me,
a
that's a
lot
low
of
ball joke.
eyelashes.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't like making fun of people's appearances. I think it's low
Okay,
ball in my opinion. But
why did they make him like they like AI photoshopped him to be like
they all look like that.
handsome?
So like, that's a conversation I would love to have. Even like DeSantis's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Why?
just sit in the background and roll your eyes at some of the things they say? Because
Just how do you
I
think?
understand a lot of the media interviews and things like that are not representative to who they
Do
are at
they
home.
feel safe calling their husbands out?
I feel like maybe I don't know these people behind the scenes, right? I don't want to speculate on that. I don't want to speculate what their relationships look like. But
Yeah.
when it comes to policy they want to put in place, right? Trump is talking about deportation, but Elon is an immigrant, naturalized. Melania is an immigrant, naturalized. And so when you talk about things like denaturalization, that hurts the people closest to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Oh.
Vance's wife's status, but I would be willing to bet that she is some form of immigrant, whether it's like second, third generation or something like that. That would still hurt part of her family in theory if denaturalization was actually a thing, right? Obviously, the first phase is to deport illegals, and the focus
Mm-hmm.
being on criminal illegals. I'm okay with that. I don't want.
Oh, she's beautiful.
She is. um and I think that's some of the kind of themes in Gilead too, right? Gilead is very whitewashed. You would not, and whitewashing is kind of just a thing in the patriarchy, in my opinion. You
Yeah.
make
I
people
mean,
of color kind of your enemy.
but so like they don't get too much into race. The only time that race was actually brought up is when it was like the aunts doing the paperwork and saying, okay, this handmaid's gonna go to this place, and they
Well, that's
they
the
did
thing though,
mention like,
is,
oh, this family doesn't want a black baby.
well, you would never see. in the reality of Gilead, they did that for the TV show, right?
Yes.
They did the to give something to the right, the DEI hires for the
Yes.
TV show. In actual practical application of Gilead in a world that country existed. And yes, the themes are Handmaid's Tale was not in a sense a work of fiction. It was written on world events that were going on at the time that she was writing it. She has hundreds of resources at the end of those books that she used to write them, and what was going on in the world and actual things that
Yeah.
were happening around the world. It
When was
might
it written?
be I don't know. I'll have to
Like,
look that up.
I Google it.
I based on the themes, I would guess around a wartime, but I don't know off the top of my head. I could just grab the book. It's sitting next to me, but you wouldn't see a person of color as a handmaid. They would all get sent to the colonies.
1985.
19 Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't see that. You just wouldn't. And I think that's where some of the television aspect of the series came in, is you get characters like of Matthew in the later seasons, and
You're gonna have to
obviously the
you're
Rita.
gonna have to give her her original name because they start.
I don't
I can't remember
know
any of
her
their.
original name, but it's the Black Handmaid. I don't know that they ever
Oh, the
give her
one,
original
yes,
name.
the one that
The
goes
one that's
insane.
the one that
The
goes
one I
insane.
sent you the video of, like,
Yes.
really interesting.
I can't think of her actual name, if they even ever tell you her actual name. I don't think they
I think
do,
they.
because she's very like, this is my calling. I'm doing the Lord's work, or at least she plays the part very well.
I think of Matthew is Natalie.
Yeah, that sounds yeah,
Natalie.
that sounds about
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Um so right, you get handmaids going crazy. In
Mm-hmm.
one season a handmaid bombs the place, and then you've got the
Yeah.
one that is shooting people up in the grocery store. That's not good for their mental health. And I
Technically, she
mean,
didn't shoot anyone. She was about to.
fair enough. But then you get into the concept of biblical rape.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And then you really start to look at, again, paralleling to current times, states like Texas getting rid of no fault divorce and calling it covenant marriage law.
What does that even mean?
It basically means it's going to be nearly impossible, not that it already isn't, for
But
someone to get out of a marriage that is abusive, or, in the case of marital rape or things like that in the state of Texas.
what if you just don't love them anymore and they've turned into
No fault
people
will
that
cease
like
to
you
exist.
but
That's the point.
but
You will have to have a fault in your spouse. And in the case of the covenant marriage in Texas, both parties have to agree to divorce. These are bills that were introduced. I don't believe they've passed, but they are coming into the woodworks now that Trump has won. And
I did
that's the
not like
problem I
that.
see. It's not necessarily Trump's administration that's going to do all of this. It's what he represents and what it allows people to come out of the woodworks and do.
Yeah, cuz he will let it slide.
Yes, but also with the push to put everything back to the states, which fine, I'm all for little government. I'm all for not having massive government and wasting thousands upon thousands and millions upon millions on stupid shit that doesn't matter. I'm all
Sure.
for that.
When we're talking about
If it
rights
actually
though,
works. Um,
I feel like
well,
it
technically,
it's kind of different when it becomes like a civil right. That
technically
I feel like.
speaking, Roe v.
Mhm.
Wade was always a Supreme Court case. It was never codified as a right. It was
I know.
said that it was protected by the 14th Amendment, but that was always up to
And
interpretation,
I
right?
know.
And it's the same with Oberfell.
Mhm.
It is the same with my marriage. There is a Supreme Court case that protects interracial marriage. all of that gets pushed back to the States. You live in an extremely racist state. Voila, your interracial marriage could be nullified. Not mine, because mine isn't owned by the States. That was the best decision I ever made, not filing in the US right now.
Oh yeah.
Might not be respected in the States, but my marriage
But
license
do they
cannot
have to
be
if since it's not in the States, do they have to even like they still have to recognize it, right?
correct.
Okay.
Yes. They cannot annul my marriage because it's interracial. If for some reason, which I don't foresee it going that extreme, right? I don't foresee Florida saying no interracial marriages. We don't want any of that. That would be kind of silly here,
Good luck,
especially.
bro.
But
Yeah.
um in a case that happened, my marriage license is not filed here in the States. They cannot legally annul my marriage or anything like that.
You did in Jamaica?
Grand Cayman,
Yes.
which is a very Catholic country and requires some interesting steps for the marriage license to be like divorced. I've
Oh.
always wondered if in the case something happened to us and we had to go through that process, what it would mean, because our
Oh,
marriage
that'd be
license is not here
complicated.
in the States.
That would be
um
complicated.
it's going to be complicated, but that's why I didn't I've been married to that man
You
for
don't.
7 years
Yeah.
now. Like I have
Yeah.
no
No plans.
like mm,
There's no
if
desire.
I was going to, there are so many things over the last 7 years that may have led to that.
Mm-hmm.
To some people, right? But I knew who he was when I married him, and we had conversations. And I am not one of those people when it comes to like my body, my choice. Right? My husband couldn't give two shits. He wants everybody to have autonomy, no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's one of those people that believes that anything is your right to like your decision. That is
Mm-hmm.
your autonomy. You are a human. That is it.
Yes.
So the things that in like him, if he were a red voter, which I'm not talking about, who what our little anarchist circle here in my household discusses. But like in a world where he was a red voter, I wouldn't be one of those people where like I'm divorcing my husband today because he voted red, because that's
Yeah.
not why he would have voted red.
No.
And yes, you can make the argument that voting for is voting against the other things, but I don't agree with that, because
Not directly.
it's back to the conversation in the beginning, it's about policy.
Yeah. How much how many eggs you put in which baskets?
Agreed. And how much damage can be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are freaking out over things that would literally require the Constitution to be suspended. We
Right.
cannot physically become Gilead without the Constitution being suspended. It's just not possible. A lot of the
It's
things
the
Trump wants
camera
to do.
following your arm.
Yeah, it is. Um, a lot of things that this administration wants to do, it can be slightly made illegal via rescinding of approvals. And right, as two females that work in a male dominated workspace, if if they
Yes.
were to dismantle the Department of Labor, where a lot of those discrimination protections lie for
I'm
companies
gone.
that they have to follow.
They're kicking me out. Maybe like get rid of this one.
That
She's too
is
smart for her
where
own good. She.
I foresee a lot of issues for us in the workplace, because
Oh yeah.
while our world has changed, women are more accepted now in the engineering fields, we still aren't fully accepted
Oh no.
by
Oh no.
everybody, I should say.
Yeah, and then there's also that there's a tolerance. There's a tolerance for it.
Agreed. And I
And
feel
there's
that
a lot of people who are just complacent, like they're not for or against, they just whatever. They won't go out of their way to protect their female coworkers when there's wrongdoings, but they also just don't really if they leave, if they get their job taken away, they're like, "Oh, okay." They don't care.
no, I totally agree. But also I just foresee that in a world where they can't get in trouble anymore for saying hateful shit, they will.
They c- So they get. I'm having a hard time with like people who are saying kind of fucked up shit and not getting in trouble.
But now imagine there's no way they could get in trouble.
I feel like it's already there, but okay.
Yes and no, right? Like HR is HR and they do what they can in theory. But similar to why they want to gut the government, right? One of the things in that document that is 900 pages of absolute slop um, that they mention is that government employees basically are protected from being fired and they should have to go through regular performance reviews just like everybody else in the corporate world. And that is true. For the most part, once you get past your probationary period as a GS or government employee, it is nearly impossible to fire you. But what they don't really think about is that is true in the corporate world as well.
Oh yeah.
The longer you've been with a company, the harder it is going to be for any system to fire you.
Even after your first year, like
Well, that usually a probationary period in the government is your first year, and after that, you're basically untouchable.
right, I know, but I'm saying like that it's like
That's true
corporate
at
world is
companies too. They don't call
yeah.
it a probationary period, but they do
No.
watch you for your first year, and then after that, it's basically impossible to fire you unless there's
Yeah.
layoffs. They hide a lot of things behind layoffs in the big corporate companies.
They do. They do, and that's what I noticed this year.
um, so yes, these things are already happening. It is already hard to get justice, for lack of a better way of putting it, for discrimination in the workplace or hostile workplaces, right?
Fuck,
Um,
even hiring people.
yeah, hiring is a whole different story, though.
That is a whole different. Yeah.
I'm talking what will be protected by the Department of Labor, right? A lot of people have
Yeah.
talked about overtime standards.
Oh
Sure,
yeah.
sure. They could implement something that says no tax on overtime, but what companies are going to turn around and do, and we've seen it, I've seen it at other companies in the past, is say, yeah, no overtime for you.
Hmm. I mean,
Or
we don't technically get overtime either. We just get compensated another
no, we
way.
can get
Is what
paid.
you have to get approval though. You have to go through steps.
Yes,
And then
but
there's
we
also
have
a
a
cap on your overtime.
choice.
There's a cap on your overtime.
No, there's not.
At least in my area there is.
Not for us. There's not. As long as you're approved for X amount, then you don't have to. You do have to get it
So
approved, right?
baseline we're only approved for up to like 20 hours
Yeah, no,
max.
we can flex ours wherever way we want. But they recommend, right? A lot of people around in the higher ups recommend choosing to get more vacation time. They're already doing
Hmm.
this, right? They're already recommending that you get something like vacation time. And that's because they know you'll never use it. It's
Yeah, and
use
it
or
only
lose
lasts a
by the end of
year.
the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're the type of person that's already doing overtime as a salary worker, you're not going to use your vacation, or it's going to be very, very hard to use your vacation. And that's kind of their theory behind it, right? But not, we are lucky in the sense that we even have an option. Like,
True.
yes, I don't think, I don't, right? Exempt salary employees are not supposed to get overtime. So that's when they're talking about no tax on overtime, they're talking about the people who are hourly or non exempt salary employees, right? When I first started out of school, I was a non exempt salary, and our overtime was absolutely insane. 90% of my paycheck, I would think, in that first year was overtime. And the tax
Fuck.
on it is absolutely insane.
Fuck.
However, in a world where you're no longer taxed on that, either they're going to lower salaries coming in, knowing how much overtime you're going to be working, which they did do already when I got hired on that job. They said, we're going to be working a lot of overtime. You're non exempt. So your initial salary is somewhat lower because of all of the overtime. But what they forgot to mention to dumb 20-year-old me, and I didn't know a lot about tax law at the time, is overtime is taxed significantly more than base
Yeah.
salary pay.
And it's not like the company gets taxed.
No,
You're the one
the
getting
individual
taxed.
does.
Yeah.
So no tax on overtime in theory sounds great, especially if you work a lot of overtime, until companies come in and go, yeah, we're not paying you that, so you no longer get overtime. So a lot of people that survive on overtime are now no longer going to get those things, or they're going to change the definition of overtime. So instead of within a week, it's like you have to work 160 hours a month to get overtime.
Oh, fuck. That's
Mm-hmm.
no. Hell no.
It'll be over a month time or a 2 week time or whatever your current situation is, so that it's more difficult to get that overtime, which is
That's
kind of what our
disgusting.
company already does with kind of our flex system. They want you to flex
Yeah.
hours into and out of different weeks rather than have overtime.
Which I don't mind it. It's been very helpful for me.
I don't mind it now, but back
But you can
on
choose
some of
you
my
can choose if you want it to go to what they call comp time or if you want to flex it, though.
yes and no, depending on how much of it you've done.
Correct. So that's where you have to do the math. You're like, okay, well, we got like
And if
a
you have the
gate
approvals.
and the approvals.
Yeah.
And you can
So
only flex
it's
this amount of hours front or back.
but again, we're
It's hard.
lucky that we have any option at all for overtime. And
Hmm.
I don't know if in the future, because we are exempt, if that, like, say,
Will
for
change.
whatever reason we do get the no tax on OT, if they will even let us get paid anymore. If it will just
They
become
might
full
say,
comp time.
yeah. Well, then if it is gonna be full comp time, they better not fucking cap it.
Oh, I know what you're saying about cap. Okay, so comp time is different than our PTO cap. I get it now. I had to think about that for a second. It's a separate bucket.
Yes.
So I think it does cap out,
The
though, now
comp
that you
time
say
is
that.
use it or lose it.
Well, yes, but also, like, it's not. So say we have like a 250-hour cap.
Mm-hmm.
That separate bucket is not a part of that 250-hour cap. So you could have 250 and then
Yes.
like the comp time
The comp
200
time.
cap. So you could
20.
technically have like 400 hours or whatever it is.
It's only 20 hours. You can't accrue comp time like that.
Well, you can. You can't,
With
but
approval.
you can. Well,
With
the
approval.
approvals are weekly, right? So if you say, for instance, back in the day, I would pick up a Friday every now and again, and I would get
Back in
overtime
my
approval.
day.
I
Sorry.
would get overtime approval on weeks that I knew, especially if I was going physically to the site. That's when I
Mm-hmm.
would go for the overtime. Um, so I would get the overtime approval earlier in the week and be like, hey, I know I'm coming in on Friday. I would work a full week because it was busy, and that was the whole reason I was working the Friday in the first place. And then I got
Mm-hmm.
full overtime on that Friday. And then any extra overtime that I worked during the week.
Yeah.
So I could get 20 hours that week, but I could also do it again 2 weeks later,
Yeah.
which I've done. So you can have more than 20 hours, maybe just not a week, which if you're working more than 20 hours of overtime in a singular week, you've got issues. Unless you're traveling, because traveling, I think, is a completely different story when it comes to overtime. Travel should just be immediately non-exempt, and you don't have to get approvals or anything, because travel days are just wild nonsense.
It's like 14-hour days, bro.
Yep.
Yeah. Um
But right, we talk about women becoming less than in society and leading us towards Gilead, which is why a lot of that comparison has come about. And things like removing discriminations against different groups in the workplace could lead us to that, right? A
mhm.
lot of people are theorizing that they want to make the workplace so miserable for women that they're just going to quit and stay home with their kids.
I mean, they kind of already do that, but it's just harder. So they'll just make it easier for them to be assholes. To, yes. But also,
I
like, how are we even going to be able to stay home with our kids and provide for them if, like, we can't even get men that will be those providers?
well, in theory, if policy, matched thoughts, they would start making more policy that benefited the family. In theory, you would start doing things like family votes and family stipends, and, like, yes, you already have child taxes and things like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more um offering childcare vouchers to be used to
Okay,
the
but how is that going to motivate
individuals.
men to want to have families? Because the
Well,
issue is there's
they would
one
change
side
the
of the thing with the women.
schools.
Shh,
They're already
but that'll take a long time to get
not
that
if they
kind
get
of.
rid of the Department of Education.
No, no, no. It'll take a long time in sense of like the generations and restructuring them and being able to like undo at least the amount of social
Yes and no, right? Because they're talking
issues.
about kind of penalizing single mother homes, penalizing the idea of being divorced, penalizing the idea of having
But
kids out of
that's
wedlock.
that's against the woman. That is always against
I'm
the
not
woman, and that's.
disagreeing with you. I am
But how are we
saying
supposed to, if you want to go that way, how are you even going to get to the point where you're getting the men to be on board too? Or the men to actually be providing for their
they're not
kids or
going to
even
be.
want
They're
to
going to
have
be
kids?
forced.
How do you force them? Because I know you're easily able to force a woman.
I mean, religious indoctrination goes a long way, but
That's why I'm saying that takes time. That part takes time.
yes and no, it's already started.
I seriously do not see it. I do not see it.
I'm not
The men
talking
can't
your
even get it up.
generation.
So
I'm
how are they
talking
even
the
gonna have.
kids in school right
I'm
now.
saying I'm saying my generation. We're the ones who are supposed to be making babies now.
No, technically it's mine, but yeah. What I'm saying is with penalization, and again, if you read the slop, there is policy supposedly coming that will force men to go to classes to be better fathers and providers, and um basically outlaw divorce and force I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying this is how they think we can make family first really the front runner of the American culture.
Right.
And
All I'm saying is that if you just focus on the female aspect of restrictions on the female or restrictions on single,
they're
like,
not expecting
how you
dads to be anything more than money makers, which is
but
why
how
they're
do they how
changing.
do they even make them want to be dads?
They don't, that's not what they want. They're think arranged marriages, no birth control, maybe even ceremonies, if you will.
How do you do that? Gilead?
Government overreach.
How does a government I don't how does how how would that
How did
even
China
work?
enact one child policies because of overpopulation issues? It has happened. It's not a new concept.
But it's the forced marriage, it's the forced.
You're thinking as if we are still a democracy in this scenario.
Yes. Yes, I am. I
It's
am.
not possible in a democracy.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, if we keep our democracy, like, how would they even like? They're not going to be successful in a democracy to get where they want to go with that.
You assume democracy is the goal.
I don't assume anything. I'm just saying, right now we're a democracy, and if they want to get their goals done, they will have to go past the democracy
You
to
assume
be able to do that.
by the time World War III starts that we're going to be fighting with our allies.
What allies?
I That's not what I said.
What?
You assume by World War III we will be fighting with our allies.
No.
Is what I said.
No. 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 I don't think that. No.
Because
No.
I believe otherwise.
I don't. I don't know what I think. All I'm thinking is very logically, literally, and like based off of the scenario we're in now, the steps it would take if they wanted birth rate to go up. Yeah, they can make birth rate go up. There's gonna be
Did you
a
forget we
lot of
talked about turning the military on U.S. citizens?
that is the only.
Surveillance
That's where I'm
states.
saying. That's where I'm saying like that still is not in. If we're still in a democracy, and that happens,
Gilead didn't happen in a democracy.
I know this, but I'm saying in reality, where we do keep the democracy for somehow, some reason, not going into a war yet, in order to successfully get the birth rates up,
War is the Trojan horse.
war is the war is the only way for them to do that. In the direction that they want to go. Now there's other ways that you could cut the cake, and they just decide, no, we don't want to do it that way.
I mean, you got to look at
You can
there are documents out there saying he's going to purge U.S. generals and replace them with choices of his own. Or correction, he is going to create a
loyalists.
board that will determine who are the woke generals and admirals in the military and remove them. I don't really know what that would entail, but that is
What the fuck does that even mean?
There are rumors of state of emergency being called in order to carry out mass deportations.
I'm following the martial law. Like, I understand. You're saying that's the only trigger for them to be able to push their agenda.
No, that's not the only trigger. It's a trigger. It's the easiest trigger. But if we look at, in a theory where we are still somewhat of a democracy and there are still loopholes to everything we do, because there is loopholes to everything we do.
Always.
How do you make sure that you carry out this family first agenda you want to carry out, right? Step one.
Carry it out. It's just going to be successful unless you get both parties
Loyalists
involved.
that will not tell you no. Well, that's already being done.
Oh, you cut out. It was big lag.
Oh, sorry. Step one is installing loyalists that will not tell you no.
Correct. Yes, man.
That's pretty much already being done. And if Trump
That's
gets
always been
his
the case,
way and gets recess appointments, then some of these very concerning cabinet picks will not have to go through the traditional Senate confirmation process.
Oh, fuck.
And they have a Senate majority leader as Republicans now. They are not the minority anymore. They are the majority in both the House and the Senate. Narrow majorities, but majorities nonetheless.
Yes.
And, the people that are supposed to uphold the Constitution in the Supreme Court are clearly not keen on doing so.
Yeah. Already, yes.
So the installing the loyalist piece started in his first administration. If you truly believe he wants to be a dictator, I'm not saying any of this is to be true. This is me just theorizing shit.
Tinfoil hat right now.
That would be step number one. Install loyalists that will not tell you no. And remove any doubt from people that have told you no. Right? We heard things from Mike Pence. We heard things from previous secretaries of defense in his previous administration. We heard a lot of things that could be concerning to some people. Step two, align yourself with foreign allies that carry out similar practices to what you want. You don't even need North Korea if they're already aligned with Russia and you're in the pocket of Putin.
I know, but I'm just giving an example.
Again, this is all theory. I'm not saying he is or he
All
isn't.
theory. No.
Right? Aligning yourself with countries who've already implemented policies similar to what you want
I feel like you're
to
giving a
show
guidebook
the
right now.
American people that it's a good thing.
You're giving a guidebook right now.
This shit has existed. It's
I know.
history,
I know.
right? Anyone who knows anything about World War II,
We
I
all know the
mean,
steps.
it,
Duh.
it didn't just happen overnight.
No. No, it did not.
So we're talking family first, because I could talk military strategy too, because that one's a whole big issue. But I'm not going to. We're going to talk family first. We're aligning with countries that do something similar, so it wouldn't be so outrageous if our allies are doing it too. Sure. Step 3, get some of those loyalists to change things at the federal level in order to make it more difficult countrywide to do the things that you don't want them to do. Control without really saying control. For instance, as we talked earlier,
Control, but basically saying, oh, but it's independent.
the
You get to
walkback of
choose.
approval for vaccines, the walkback of approval for mifepristone, the walkback of approval for, I don't know, fucking SSRIs and ADHD medications. You don't want your people hopped up on pills. Well, we're just going to make sure that no one can get them because there's no longer approved to be distributed in the United States.
Yeah. But this also kind of like there's a you would definitely have to like restructure the FDA in order to do that because and the medical industry because right now food industry, medical industry, they're feeding off of each other to make more money. Cuz more pills, more money. Bad food, more sick. More pills, more money.
Sure, when you talk about things like SSRIs, but when you're talking about birth control and mifepristone, all you have to do is walk back those. We're talking family first here. So you walk back approvals for hormonal birth. You walk back approvals for birth control and you walk back approvals for mifepristone. As some have stated, you then reenact the Comstock Act, which would then ban the shipping of any medical supplies associated with abortions. So therefore, even if it is banned in your states, you can also now no longer get things from other places.
You'd have to literally go out of the country.
And get through customs with a banned product, yes, which would not be. Anyways, there we go. You've taken care of your abortion and you've taken care of most of your main forms of birth control. You have a few others that are not hormonal that would then have to be dealt with. Make sure insurances don't cover these things. IUDs are not cheap. Most people would be deterred from getting them. And to some, IUDs are also
hurt.
Hormonal, but also some IUDs are hormonal, but to some they are also potential abortifacients. Right? So we're rolling back approvals for all of these things. They no longer are allowed to be on the market.
Yep.
So really, your only thing left at that point, if you roll back approvals, because for the sake of equality, we'll even roll back any approvals for male birth control that might exist right now, which I think is few and far between. I don't know that there's any formal FDA approvals. There might just be for research purposes at the moment. Then your really only thing left to tackle is condoms. And what can men do? Just about anything they want to those things. You could just make them not sellable. You could make some sort of recall on them.
Expensive or...
Well, I'm pretty sure a lot of them are imported. So you add your tariff plan to that, and now they're going to be like $20.
For $20 for one wrap.
Yeah. So you make
Fuck.
them nearly
It's an
expensive.
it's an
You make
expensive
things
fuck.
very expensive to obtain or impossible to obtain.
Yeah.
So now your options are family planning, really, at that point? Like cycle tracking? Oh, but wait, how do most people do cycle tracking nowadays? Through
In
apps
their
where they can track your
phones.
data.
Yep. I'll stop
Surveillance
doing that.
state enters the surveillance state enters the room. And now, say maybe they put in a federal abortion ban, which is talks but not really approved, like unlikely
Mm-hmm.
to pass realistically. There's not enough nut jobs to
Ooh,
do a
girl, I got
formal
therapy in
abortion
4 minutes,
law.
3 minutes.
Oh shit.
Oh,
Well,
oh shit.
I wasn't sure you had that this morning.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
do. Sorry, my bad.
there are ways that you can take little steps, right? It's not going to be overnight, because to do overnight you would have
Mm-mm.
to get rid of the Constitution, and that's just not a thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they can't do
You,
damage.
but you'll see the
And
steps. You'll see it happening.
then, right? They're similar. They could make spousal sign off on things. They could hand your property and your bank accounts for whatever
Once that
reason. That
starts
one would be
happening,
weird.
of the whole signing off, I'm out. Bye.
It might be too late at that point, honestly. I am watching
To,
things very carefully right now because I've looked at all of these different dystopian futures, and what a lot of them are researched on things that currently happen.
yeah.
Even Hunger Games was written on things that were happening in the world. These aren't new concepts. They are new
Mm-mm.
concepts in a democracy. But you also have to assume that democracy will still be intact or not loopholed, because there are
Yes.
always loopholes,
Always. We love it.
right? You have a
Yay.
Supreme Court that has basically said the 14th Amendment didn't matter and that Trump isn't an insurrectionist.
Yay.
Uh,
Mm.
think what you will about that. I
Yes.
mean, we don't have to. The biggest, like the two biggest differences when you want to look at parallels would be Gilead wasn't climate deniers. They very
Mm-hmm.
much so went green when they started creating their own country in order to
Mm-hmm.
save fertility,
Yes.
which I could see kind of not necessarily environmental protections, but definitely food and water protections when it
But
comes to
how do you
RFK
do
being
one
installed.
without the other? How do you do one without the other? That's like
You
almost
don't.
you
Food
don't.
you can do without, but
You
water
just
and air, you have to do environmental protections to fix that shit. Like you
that's what I'm
just have
saying.
to.
Like it's not
But
possible.
I can see the glitter of, we want to
I can
fix
see
our foods to fix our
the
fertility
face. Yeah.
with RFK being installed.
Mm-hmm.
And with the rest of the administration, I say it's not just RFK, because
No.
there's so many other pieces to this that are just
There's a
wild
lot
to
of
think
hands in the
about.
bucket.
But you don't have to unalive all of Congress if A, you've already installed enough nut jobs in Congress, and B, you unilaterally give yourself the power to remove and reinstall when they tell you no. Then you're just authoritarian, and oh wait, guess who your best friend is? Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But
Hmm.
yeah,
All right,
we
that's
could.
it.
I think this is just part one. We could go on this
Yes.
for
Well,
days.
I've got
There's
like
so many of these things, but
2 more seasons and a few episodes to go, and then doing the audiobooks. So
well, also there'll be season 6. We just don't know when it's coming out. So there will be a follow-on, but also I feel like there'll just be future follow-ons as the administration takes shape in January and everything else. What are we looking at? How are we paralleling with different things in the world? Because I want to see how we parallel with the 900-page disaster.
I don't think it's gonna be a 1-to-1, but there's gonna be a little.
It's getting pretty close already, but we'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
No more education. No, I kid. Like I said, this is all just theory. This is me looking at parallels, looking at patterns, because realistically, if any administration lacks pattern, it's this one. It's Trump and anyone he installs with himself. And predicting what this administration is going to do is like dismantling a bomb I've never read the manual for. Like it's
Do I cut the red wire or the blue one?
it's not the easiest thing in the world to try to pattern predict.
No.
I mean, yes, you can look at history like World War II, and you can look at other just historical empires and things like that and see
There's so many
maybe
puzzle pieces that are moving that like
yeah.
they have to be adaptive
You also have a loose cannon
in their plan. Yes.
Trump. Did he do good things in his first presidency? Yes. But we can't assume the second one is going to be like the first one just purely because he's on a revenge tour, and he's admitted to being on a revenge tour. He's a little bit more unhinged this time than he was last time, or at least that's the way he's portraying in the media. And from what I understand, he was extremely unhinged the first time. And I don't
They
love
were
that.
just trying to hide it well. Now they're like, fuck it.
So I will be, not that this whole podcast is turning politics, but I definitely will want to like pull up different scenarios as we get further into this administration, because realistically there could be
It
good things,
affects
there could be
us.
absolutely horrible things, there could be it could be the most benign administration we've ever seen, because all of them are jokes and have no idea what they're doing. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
We also don't know that these cabinet picks are actually going to get confirmed. Like, we genuinely don't know. We can say all these theories, and we can go to Project 2025 or America First, whatever the fuck they want to call it now, and say this is their plan.
We
Everyone
won't
should
know until we're
fear
there.
it.
We won't know until we're there.
Well, you also don't know, like, again, assuming democracy still exists, you don't know what Congress and the Senate are going to do. There are plenty of Republicans that don't like Trump.
That's my therapist.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I think I want to do a part 2 next week, just because there's still so much that, like,
Yes.
in this core base right now that we could talk about when it comes to Gilead and everything else. So
Yes.
that is it for this week. Hopefully we'll be on a regular basis again. Things are a little wacky and it's the holidays, but we also do need to talk about, like, we've been doing this for a year now. We in October we missed our 1 year, but yeah.
I know. I gotta go.
I know. Sorry. You can drop and I'll just finish it from here. But yeah,
No.
I don't even remember what the ending is. So just hi, welcome back to
Hi.
Engineering Chaos, where we are chaos at all times. So yeah, Handmaid's Tale. Is it our new life? Who knows?
Blessed be the fruit.